Hey guys, see, I told you I'd make another video sooner than, what was it, 3 months or so? Well, anyways, I found myself out here in nature, and I think I'm gonna start doing videos out here because it's quiet, it's soothing, I don't have to talk really loud. But anyways, what I wanted to talk about was, I watched this video by a guy called Serpent ZA. And he's a South African guy who lives in China, and he made a video about the differences between Japan and China, and I actually thought it was a really good video, and I just wanted to make a video to kind of supplement that, just kind of comment with my experiences. And you know, in his video, and I don't want to misrepresent what he said, but basically he talked about how Japan was fully developed, wasn't a lot of room for growth, things like that, whereas China is, still growing, still expanding, which is, true. Last time I was there was maybe a year and a half ago. Same thing with Japan. So that's where my kind of qualifications, I feel like, come. I've been to both countries, spent about the same amount of time there. But anyways, so he talked about that. He talked about, the differences in the culture, where Japan is more reserved and polite versus China, where people are more boisterous, I guess, and a little bit ruder. And he was pretty accurate with his video. That's why I said I liked it. But anyways, what I wanted to say was, well, firstly, the thing about China and Japan, I'm just going to sit down here for a sec. One thing that I've noticed is the difference in area. And by the way, I'm just trying to add to the conversation, not trying to restate things that Serpent CA said, because what would be the point of that? So the first thing I wanted to say was, Japan is, almost all developed, at least from what can be developed. I think I've heard the stat quoted somewhere as like 95% of the country is uninhabitable, which means that they have to build up. You won't find yards or a lot of wide open spaces in Japan like you would here. And the country itself is relatively small. I mean, it's only like the size of California in the States, so like it's not that big of a place. I mean, there's plenty of stuff to see, don't get me wrong, and part of the fun of Japan is wandering and getting lost, and you can afford to do that in a country where the crime rate is so low. Not that you can't do that in China, but in Japan, it's just on an objective basis, like, it's not that big, I guess, and a lot of the space you're confined. Whereas in China, you are almost unlimited to what you can see. The country is infinitely times bigger, and that's what one of the things I try to convey to people is just how much there is to see. I mean, God, the Great Wall, I don't even know how long it is, but seeing that is just unbelievable. I mean, not that Japan isn't beautiful, it is, not that it doesn't have things to see, but China just has so much more, physically more stuff to see, more alleys, more markets, more everything. Just, it's so much more open, and it's a developing country, so a lot of it isn't kind of, I don't want to say restricted or off limits, but like, a lot of undiscovered or uncultivated things. So that's the first thing I wanted to say was, if you're kind of looking to just see as much as possible, I think China would be the place to go, because it's just so much bigger, and a lot of it is undeveloped still. So you can go and be in remote villages and not see a soul, and you can go and see cities with millions and millions of people and no room. I mean, you really got the best of both worlds. One point that I always try to convey to people when they ask about China, and this kind of goes along with what Serpent ZA was saying, is China is like the wild, wild west. That's what I usually say. As in, and he's talked about this in other videos too, and I'll link to his channel and videos in the description, but China is like the wild, wild west. Like, there's so much that you can just see and explore, and it's just such a crazy place that you feel like you're in the West, in America, in, you know, the cowboy days. Like, you see so much stuff you've never seen before that you won't see anywhere else, like stuff you won't see in Japan. Just the craziest things you've ever seen. You can get away with a lot of stuff, like out in public and stuff. I mean, he's talked about that in the other video. But yeah, like one thing I always tell people, to give you an example, is I saw a cop get in a fist fight on the street with an old lady, and there was a huge crowd, and yeah, I didn't get to see who won because I was just driving by. But you know, you don't see that in Japan. You don't see that in America, really. I mean, well, you might see that, but yeah, you don't really see things like that. And just to get back to the main point, was just the sheer vastness of that country is just really amazing, and it's a beautiful country too. I mean, I tell people, like, if you want to, I feel like a lot of the times you have to try to persuade people to go to China, because when you first hear all the bad things about it, people are like, oh, I don't want to go there. But don't let that scare you, and that's for another video, which I'm probably going to make at some point soon. But yeah, don't let misconceptions and information scare you from coming to China, because it's awesome. The second thing I wanted to say was how people treat you in each country. Serpent ZA kind of talked about this in terms of, like, Japanese people being really, really nice, really courteous, willing to help you, things like that. Whereas in China, I think people kind of get a bad rap for being rude or loud, things like that. And some of those things are true, but what I wanted to say was, in my experience in Japan, I always tell people, or I always say, it's like being a rock star. And by that I mean, you can walk down the street and people will be like waving at you, saying hi to you, staring at you. Obviously, I mean, you look different. Obviously, if you're not Japanese, you're going to look different. It's one of the most homogeneous societies in the world, so you're going to stick out. But in Japan, it felt like you're a rock star. Like, everybody wanted to talk to you. If you go out at night, you'll always have people beckoning you to come into clubs and not charging you, things like that. I mean, you'll have that all over Asia and everywhere else. You'll have people trying to get you to the club. But I mean, my point is that, like, it makes the club look good, or it makes the store look good to have you in there, or, you know, people just want to get to know you because they think, oh, you're Western, like, you must be really cool. And that would make sense because, you know, Japan is really, really Westernized, so they're used to Western culture. It's just, you know, Japanese culture is a lot different. That's what I always say. That's what's different about Japan. It's not so much the surroundings or how people live. It's the people, like the actual culture within each person. That's what's different. So when you go there, you don't really get culture shock. And on the flip side, China, I kind of feel like, I don't know if this is the right word, but you feel like you're like a freak. Like, people will just come up and take your picture and not even acknowledge you. They'll just take your picture like you're some sort of animal. And that can freak people out. Like, it definitely freaked people out when I was there. I didn't really, you know, think twice about it. You know, it's just whatever. But yeah, people will do that. They'll just like stare at you like you're a freak of nature, like you're some caged elephant or something. And that's weird, you know, or not weird, but like that's different, you know. And I don't think people are expecting that, surely, because of this idea that we've, you know, American/Western culture has been prevalent in all these other countries, which it is, but not so much in China. You know, a lot of people aren't exposed to Western culture, Western media. Like, some people when I was there I don't think had ever seen a Westerner or a white person or a black person or Hispanic person, because I was with a group and we had all those people. And so it's really a shock for some Chinese people. I mean, if you're in Shanghai or Beijing, you know, those people are going to be more accustomed to seeing foreigners. But, you know, you get out to the western part of China, central China, they're not going to know. You might be the first white person or whatever that they see. So be prepared for that. Whereas in Japan, it's not so much. I feel like a lot of people, maybe not in the country, I didn't get to be out in the country very much when I was there, but, you know, a lot of people are used to Westerners. So I feel like over there it's like, oh, wow, hi, how are you, you know? But in China it's like, whoa, who is that? What is that thing, you know? Who is that guy? So be prepared for that. And then the last thing I wanted to say was, I think there's a big difference in how people act. And again, I've kind of talked about it already, and Serpent ZA has kind of talked about it already, but what I mean by that is, I feel like Japanese people are really, really reserved. And what I mean by that is, you have to like pry open their fun side, or like you have to really try to get them to open up. Whereas I don't feel like that's the case with Chinese people, the ones that I've known and met. You know, I have a lot of Japanese friends. I've been to Japan, and just talking to people, and you know, a lot of them are open, a lot of them are willing to meet you, you know, that kind of thing. But you really get to talking to them, and I just feel like you have to really try really hard to get them to like loosen up. That's the right word, loosen up. Versus Chinese people, I feel like they're way more relaxed all the time. They'll open up to you, just not as, I don't know if materialistic is the right word. I don't think it is, but they just seem way more calm, way more down to earth, way more relaxed. And so that can be, you know, noteworthy when you're going to each place. Probably has something to do with the culture in both places. Like, I'm sure you've heard about Japan and all the overwork and over stressful aspects of culture. You know, people are working long hours and stuff like that. And that's, you know, that exists. And I'm sure it exists in China too, but just in my experience, felt like Chinese people were a little bit more loosey-goosey, easygoing, if that makes sense. So that's all I really wanted to say. Sorry I'm out of breath. Had to hike up that hill. But yeah, I'm gonna link his videos so you can watch and kind of compare what I have to say and what he had to say. I think he did a really good job. Shout out to Serpent ZA. Thanks for watching, and subscribe, leave a comment, send me a message. Peace out.